Good afternoon to all of you. And thank you to John, Dana, and our entire team here at the CCC for allowing me to speak in this very important moment. The scene is January 1938. We are at the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, Georgia. The pastor is Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Sr. And the youth choir is getting ready to take the choir loft. Now, I know that Martin Jr. is in that choir. And the reason why he's in that choir is not because the pastor is his father, but he's in that choir because even though we often emphasize him living into the legacy of his father, we cannot forget his mother. His mother was the church's choir director. She was also the church organist. And if you know anything about this culture and context, he's in that choir because children were not expected to volunteer for the choir, but they were voluntold to be in the choir. He's in this choir, but there's a reason that children in this tradition are voluntold. Because in this space, they are given such a wonderful and rich opportunity to engage songs and music. Songs of solace, songs of struggle. Songs that tell the story of the history as well as the prayers for the future. And I want to say to you that another reason this is so important is because in this space, those children had an opportunity to cultivate their vocal confidence. A space in which they learned how to exude and to show that they knew how to use their voice. Now, Martin Luther King, he did not become a great singer or performer like his friend and contemporary Mahalia Jackson. He didn't take that path. But we do know that when we heard his preaching, we heard the music. When we heard the way that he used his voice, we heard the pitch in the way that he would roll his words. We knew that there was something in his formation that looked something like this. And I want to say briefly, I am a Baptist preacher. We say we're not going to be long, but we always are. I want to say briefly that there is a reason why that was important in the 30s and the 40s and why it's still important today. Because cultivating vocal confidence is something that is integral to our children growing up and becoming who they're supposed to be. When we think about all of the different things, there are three things that come to mind that really show us why cultivating vocal confidence is so important for us today. Firstly, it helps us to grow in our emotional intelligence. Furthermore, it shows us that we can also develop our sense of empathy. And then finally, we can see it shows us the possibility of expression. What is so important about emotional intelligence? I want to say that when we're in this space here at the CCC, it is so important even as we engage each and every song that we sing. For we understand that songs are not just a combination of words and notes, but the songs that we sing have a message. The songs that we sing are heralding to the world something that the world needs to hear. But this requires emotional intelligence. Because when we sing "The Water is Wide," we don't come up here screaming and yelling. Because we understand that the tone of this song is a tone in which we need to approach it in a certain way. Dr. King not only experienced that as a child, as our children experience that here at the CCC, but we could also see how that grew into something very valuable in what he contributed to our country and to our world. Because it was a very bad time. It's a very hard time. It was a time filled with struggle, but he taught us emotional intelligence. He taught us that despite of our frustration, despite of our anger, despite of how terrible circumstances make us feel within, then there's a way to approach that that is more effective. Borrowing from Henry David Thoreau and Mahatma Gandhi, the tenets of civil disobedience, he expressed to the world that despite of frustration, anger, and even righteous indignation, that there's a way to respond that will be effective for the growth of our community. An American version of nonviolent resistance, he said that instead of going to the streets with bats, instead of going to the streets with torches, if you learn how to resist nonviolently, then eventually you will heap coals of shame on the heads of your oppressors. This is something that we got from him that changed the landscape of the 20th century. And here at the CCC, we teach our children that despite of your anger, despite of your frustration, despite of what the world has done to you, there's an intelligent way that you can respond that will bring the end that you need and desire. And we believe that. Furthermore, we can see not only the emotional intelligence that he taught, but we can see empathy. Because not only do we have to interpret songs and approach them from the right perspective, but we must convey them. And the fact that you're here today, you've given us an opportunity to practice our empathy. Because when we sing these songs, when we open up our voices, when we make ourselves to sing beautifully, we're not just singing to the walls or to the lights, but we're singing to you. And music, we know, is a universal language, so in this, we're conveying a message to you. We're finding common ground with you. We're finding something that unites us despite of all of the things that might differ from one person to the next. So in this space, there is empathy. And finally, the hope for the possibility of expression. It is not something that we say our children should do, but expressing themselves is something that we teach them, train them, and make as the standard for their being here and their preparation for going out into the world. And we thank you that you have affirmed that their expression matters. We thank you that you've come to hear their voice. We thank you that you have shown through your participation in what we're doing that you understand truly that their voice matters. When I think of the formation of Dr. King, I'm mindful of a proverb that comes from the sacred text that he subscribed to. And that proverb says that death and life are in the power of the tongue. Our voice matters. And this text says specifically that it matters so much that even death and life are in the power of the tongue. Meaning that negativity can come from your tongue. Positivity can come from your voice. The seeds for evil, the seeds for goodness, all reside within. And it's up to you to decide, how are you going to use your voice? How are you going to cultivate your vocal confidence? I believe today that this is not just a message to us, and indeed it is a charge to the Chester Children's Chorus to use that voice well. It is a charge to us to ensure that everything that we do is pointed towards that arc that bends towards justice. But it's not just about us. Because if I were to knock at the perimeter of that proverb and ask a critical question, is it just about using my voice, or is there something more? I believe that there's a question about silence, and that baby is not hearing anything about silence today. There's a question about silence that we must ask. Because if we talk about the power of the voice, well, what happens when we don't use it? And I think that this is where you come into this equation. Because not only do we cultivate our vocal confidence in terms of emotional intelligence, empathy, as well as expression, when we think about the fact that silence plays a part in this, we understand it, we get it. You can't do music without silence. The rest in the piece matter just as much as the notes. And there are other spaces in which we'll say that silence means respect. It means reverence, and that's good. But when we're thinking about this day and we think about the legacy of Dr. King, silence must be understood in a very specific way. Because in the problems that we face in the world, Dr. King's words resound in our hearts and our minds, paraphrased, that in the end, we will not just remember the words of our enemies, but we will also remember the silence of our friends. So today, you have an opportunity to be a part of our journey of cultivating that vocal confidence. You have an opportunity to be a part of our journey of speaking out and doing the things that make this world a better place. You have an opportunity, not just gathering here today, not just logging in online, but you have an opportunity to support the voices that you hear today, to ensure that the world hears them, but also that you speak when we cannot speak. If we do this together, then the legacy will live on. If we do this together, the children in Atlanta, the children in Chester, the children across the world will know that not only is expression a possibility, but it's a requirement. Thank you for aiding our voice. Thank you for participating and opening your mouth as well.